Hi, today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about lawnmower maintenance, specifically riding lawnmowers and the spindles for the blades. I have a John Deere D160, and in the process of sharpening the blades, I decided to go ahead and check my spindles, and what I found was they were loose. So I went ahead and pulled one out, thinking maybe it was a bad bearing. What I found was this. It's not. You'll notice how this is moving around. But what I found was it wasn't the bearing itself, it was actually the housing. See how that bearing just slips in and out of there? And it wiggles around in there. So the bearing itself, it's nice and solid. But what's happened is inside here, there's cut a groove. This bearing is actually spun inside of here and worn out a groove inside of here and worn this out. So I went ahead and decided to go ahead and order new spindles. But one of the things I noticed when I pulled these bearings on it was, even though it has a grease fitting right here on the side where you can actually grease it, the inside of the bearings, they're sealed. So the grease can't get into the bearings. So I ordered the new spindles, and next we're going to show you how to take those spindles apart, remove this little cap off here, okay, and so the grease can now get into that. So here we have our brand new spindle. Ordered these off eBay, checked them against my old spindles, make sure that they were correct, and decided to go ahead and take one apart just to see if these bearings again were sealed like the old ones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the process now of showing you how to take these apart. It's not a really hard job to do. You just need to be a little cautious when you're doing it. Make sure you don't break anything. But first thing I do is I take this nut off the top, set that aside. Now I grab a flat steel plate to put over the top of this so I'm not beating directly on top of the shaft here. So I'll put this plate on here and give it a few whacks. And out comes the spindle. So now we're going to take this off the top, pull this shaft out like so, set that aside. Now we're going to take a nice long punch, and we're going to place it down in here, and we're going to get right on the edge of the bearing. I don't know if you can see this or not, but there's actually a sleeve that's inside here. It does move around, and we move it off to the side. Again, make sure this is nice and flat. And get right on the edge of that bearing. Tap, tap, tap. Alternating side to side. You want to hit it real hard. Just be an easy tap, it'll come right out. Almost there. You pull this out. Here's your bearing. And you notice, yes, it's sealed on both sides. Inside is this sleeve. Pay attention to this. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this over. I'm going to take a larger punch and punch out the other bearing. Now, no more bearings. Set that off to the side. Then what I'll do is I'll take a nice little pick, and I will get up underneath one side of this, under the edge. Careful not to stab yourself, and just literally pull this off. Just a little seal. Set it off to the side. And do the same thing for the other end, the other bearing. Okay, very simple. Now all I do is I take this, put it back in my vise like so, put it in here. Now a lot of people use bearing driver, that type of stuff, which I could do, but these bearings aren't very tight. So I just sit there and I'll alternately tap it on both sides. Again, not whacking it hard. Making sure it's just going in there straight. Sometimes I'll actually even grab a socket. This one just happens to be 1 1/8, and set that over the top of it. Drive that in there until it bottoms out. Now here's where you got to pay attention. Make sure you put that sleeve back in there. Again, you can just drop it in. Doesn't have to be any particular orientation. Put my bearing back in the top. Oh, one thing I forgot, and that is this. And that is, I'm going to knock this bearing back out again, because what I want to do is, before I put this all together, rather than having to take a grease gun and pack all that grease inside there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand pack that so that now I know it has grease in it. Now what I'm going to do is, I've just got regular old wheel bearing grease. Now you can pick this up at any auto parts store, Walmart, whatever. I'm sure you know how to do that. Anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out, and I've got my little tool here, a little spatula, and I'm just going to pack some grease all the way around the inside of this. So I know I've got grease in it, and that way I don't have to sit there with my grease gun and pump a whole bunch of grease into this thing. I can save that for something else. And then I'll kind of make a hole there. This can get a little messy, so again, make sure you have plenty of towels handy, all that good stuff there. Okay, now that I've got that in there, I will take some more grease. And you don't have to pack this thing full, obviously. Like I say, just trying to get in stuff in there so that, like I say, it's not quite as much when I have to go in there and put in with a grease gun. Okay, one more dab ought to do it. Okay. There we go. One of the things I like to do is I like to go in here. Let me get my little tool and just kind of clean this out a little bit. Don't particularly care to have grease up around the grease on the bearing. Then I'll sit there and just get a towel, wipe that out a little bit. There we go. And you'll see how all that grease is packed in there. Now I'll get my bearing. Again, put the unsealed side down. Again, you don't have to worry about that spacer, the flange that's there in the middle. Because when it goes in there, it is loose and it will move around. Get that there going, oriented in there straight. Take my socket. You notice the sound, that way I can tell, I know that it's seated down all the way. Okay, now that I've got that, I'm going to grab my shaft again. And I've got some grease inside there. Let me clean that out real quick. Okay, don't want too much in there. So now, shove my shaft back in there. And now we're going to put this top piece on. Now this top piece is actually press fitted on there. So you're going to have to tap that on, but it shouldn't take a whole lot of effort. Again, just kind of clean the grease off a little bit. There's little grooves. Don't know if you can see the little grooves that are down inside there. So I put this back on here, orient it to the right spot. Okay, there it goes. I will set this right here. Take my socket, set it over top of that, hammer. Tap, tap. Make sure it spins freely. Put my nut back on. Now it's ready to go back on the lawnmower again. Hope this helps.